weekly Wednesday live stream here at cgcookie.com. And we do these streams every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, and that's -6 GMT if you're outside of the States. And usually I post the topic about an hour or two before the stream starts, and I'll usually tell you guys in advance what we're going to be doing on the next week's stream. Let me make sure my audio is working here. Okay, I think we're good. If you can't hear me, please let me know right away so that I can fix it as soon as possible. But I'm in a really good mood today because we get to draw and paint a mermaid. Doing tentacles is one of my favorite material studies to do, so I'm going to have a good time doing this one. And the reason we're doing this is in celebration of kind of a trend that's going around for artists this month. It's called Mermaid. And essentially, it can be one of two things. You could either do the entire month where every day you draw a different mermaid, or you can just do one and kind of put yourselves in this current trend for social media. And the reason that I encourage it is because anytime something like this is trending, you want to put your own, you want to be included for one, but you want to also show that you can stay up to what is trending and also put your creativity to the test and show what your take on the challenge is. So that more than anything, I find important because then it challenges you and hopefully stimulates you to create something more unique or more original. So that's why we are going to be painting the mermaid today. And I already have the sketch if you guys saw the promo image that I did, and that is what we'll be working with. I'm going to finish my marketing here. And I think I'm going to bring back the trend that I did last week and that I used to do for every stream. I want to know where you guys are watching from. I always think it's cool to see where everyone is watching around the world. And I'm going to finish posting the marketing it before we get started here. And for those of you who are interested, the reason CG Cookie has been a little quieter lately is because we have a whole new site, a whole rebrand, if you will, and it's coming out next month. So if any of you are interested in wanting to see what it looks like or beta test it, I have a link that I'm going to put in the comment section right now. And with that, you can be one of the beta testers for the new site. And I think we're going to be opening those up next week. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're excited to share out what we've been working on for quite a while. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to switch over to my Cintiq screen. And the only other news that I have for you guys is the exercise results is coming out probably tomorrow, actually, not on Friday. We're going to do a little earlier because I'll be driving up to Minnesota with a couple of my roommates for Anna Minneapolis. So if you are in the area, stop by and say hi. But the exercise result was on a macro study. You can find it below. Essentially, it was on doing a close-up of 4 different items. It was a safety pin, a button, a key, and what was the last thing I just painted? A zipper. And I did a step-by-step on how to draw each of them if you're interested in doing one of those macro focus studies. So for our mermaid today, I'm going to be essentially winging it, and I'm going to have fun with the color play, and I'm going to show you guys how to quickly edit your colors on the fly. I think this is something that we all want to do. Sometimes we feel trapped or like locked in with a color scheme that we're not 100% confident with, or that we feel is more cliche, and we want to switch it up, and I'll show you how to do that very easily. The references that I found, a lot of tentacle and like color palettes that I find interesting and intriguing for something more of a mermaid. Originally, I was just going to go with blue or green, as I think it's the most standard for a mermaid. But then I thought, well, why don't we mix it up and actually do more of like an octopus color, because since the hair has tentacles, why don't we go for more of like a red or something more on the pink side? So that's what I'm going to start off with. Even before the stream was starting, I'll show you guys the different color play I was working with. Originally, it was this kind of like purple blue hue, and then I was switching it up. Actually, I should show you guys. I really liked it without the line art. When it's just like this, it looked like Jello or some kind of gelatin with the way that the highlights were laying on the shapes. But then I was thinking, well, what if we went more of like a yellow route, did more of like a banana squid type coloring? And I was just messing around with it, And I want to show you guys how to do that really quickly. And the other thing is not just relying on what's expected. So with the mermaid, I think blue or green would be the first thing you think of. But then why don't you go, push yourself further? And what if you went with like a really yellow color or cyan or something that, or even like a very light green, something that you don't really think of too often for being associated with the mermaid color. So we're going to go through that. But I'm going to show you the steps along the way. So we're going to start with just the sketch on a white background. So I'm going to delete some of these extra layers here. If you guys have any questions, if you're new to these streams, please put at CG Cookie Concept before your question. That way when I go from the drawing to the comments on my other monitor, I can see it quickly, and that way I can pick it up. Oh, let me see here. Tishel says, I'm watching from my kidnapper's basement. Help, Tim, help. Ooh, I will send my roommates to come get you. Chrissy says, hello from Oregon. John from Indiana. Sweet Rose Brian from North Carolina. Yushin from Serbia. Oh, that's awesome. You have apocalyptic weather over there? It's quite contrasted to what we have over here, just like cloudy and pretty mild. Wes Burke from Geneva. Why, hello, Wes. GK Sculpting from the UK. Gypsy from Portland. Christy from Portland. Rich from New York. Okay. Let me take one more sip. I don't have tea today. I know I should usually be drinking tea because it's the... Actually, no. Sean made me tea. I am drinking tea. I'm double fisting a fruit concoction that I forgot what I put in it, and peppermint tea with a spot of honey. Oh, that's really good. Okay, so Joe Pasor says, how much does Photoshop cost? It varies. I'm currently working with Photoshop CC, and I believe it's around $20 a month, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I looked at the Adobe cost charts. Because you don't have to get the entire package. You could just get Photoshop. You don't have to do all of what they offer. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I did this sketch really late last night, and essentially I was looking for shape and form that was more heavy, and you could feel the weight of the tentacles kind of fall on the shoulders and then rest in front of her. And with our color picks, like I said, I want that to kind of match it, and I want to distinguish the difference between her body, her neck, and the tentacles. So I might do some color variation. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer underneath of our line art layer. You can see how I'll name it line art. And the reason there's so many layers is because this is the file that I use for all the stream headers. So I haven't worked with 342 layers creating this mermaid sketch. And I'll name this one underneath. And now essentially, the only thing I notice when I do streams is my OBS makes my size changer for my brush not work. So I have to use the keyboard shortcuts, which sometimes drives me crazy. But why I think it's important to use reference is because then you can quickly do a color pick from palettes that you like. And that, once again, doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay with them or it's locked in. It's just ones that you find yourself liking or you're intrigued by, and you can go from there. So I'm going to start with a very bold red color. Oh, this is way too bold, actually. Let me grab a slightly less bold red, purple. Something like that. And you see this technique used a lot where you fill in underneath a complete solid color, and then you work on top of it with adding in shadows and light. And essentially this would be considered adding a local color. And what a local color is considered is color without any kind of lighting or shadows on top of it. Now, from studying color and light, I've kind of understood that without light there wouldn't be any color because color is just our perception of light. But for the sake of drawing and creating work, I think it's easy to understand local color without any influence of light direction and shadow play. So I'm just going to create a very solid pass first. Now, this is a technique I used to use all the time, and I admittedly feel like I switched over into keeping it more loose, but I found that I can actually have more freedom if I start with more of a foundation. Now, this technique may not work for you. I find that I'm trying new techniques and I'm constantly learning what I feel works for my style and the way that I like to paint and what doesn't work. And you're going to find that along the way too. There might be a technique that you feel that you're forcing every time you paint, and I'm telling you, maybe look for a different one. If you really feel like it's unnatural or it doesn't suit your comfort in the way that you're painting, it feels very broken or it feels like forced, then change it up. John Miller says, looking forward to going to my first con this summer. My city is finally having a con. Well, that's awesome. I think conventions have been one of the best things that have happened to me in my life. Not only for having a second source of income, but also meeting new artists and what that leads to. I mean, it's led to me meeting even new roommates, but more importantly, I feel like I've made connections with other people that kind of understand the lifestyle of being an artist. So just being able to relate is really nice. Just gonna get this little tentacle over here. All right, and then for the background, I wanted to do more of like a contrasted color. So I'm just gonna throw on this sandy palette. And mind you, this is all subject to change. Like I said, nothing is set in stone. Okay, so now what we can do, now that we have a solid layer underneath, we can essentially lock the layer and only paint within it. Now you can do this with masking, but I found it to be quicker just by locking it. So to do that, on our layers menu on the left-hand side here, you can see how next to lock, there's like a checkerboard. If you click it, essentially you're masking itself out and you're only allowed to paint within the strokes that you have laid down on that layer. So since that layer is pretty much our purple foundation, what I'm going to do is let's play with like a blue hint or a blue hue. I'm going to lay it on really light. Have it kind of gradient up her body. And do it, kind of blend it in. Because I've learned more often than not, gradients will help just create a more interesting composition almost every single time. So if there's any opportunity to add in a gradient, I highly suggest you take it. And especially when you're doing a foundation, because then you can build off of it with details and rendering. And I think the suction cups on the tentacles, I'm also going to play with this color. Now you might be thinking, well, what if we want to work with a bunch of different colors? We want, a selection of the rainbow. And the way that I've always been taught and the way that I've always read about working with color is try to limit your color selection to like a good, strong little palette, and that will save you from creating the mistake of it being almost like color vomit, or there's no focus within your hues that you're selecting. And that doesn't mean you can't use every color under the sun. I've seen a lot of great pieces that really work well with every color. But I think with such a focused little painting like this, where you can experiment with color, but you don't want to go overboard, this is where I think you should really condense your color selection and see what you can do with just a few colors. We're going to make her eyes blue. And if we turn those layers on and off, you can see how already we kind of create a very quick flat coloring. And a lot of the times you'll see something like this with comic books or graphic novels. And this is kind of a foundation. From here, they might even push it further, or they might add in a toon tone color like cell shading. But for this one, we're going to take it more to a painterly look, hopefully in the time that we have. We have about an hour and a half, so let's see how far we can get today. Now, for example, let's say even at this stage, you can already tell you're not digging the purple color palette. There's something about it that you just don't like. The first way of changing the color on the fly is opening up your hue and saturation menu bar. And you can do that either by a keyboard shortcut, which I highly recommend, or going to Image at the top, Adjustment, Hue and Saturation. And the first one is your hue. Now, oftentimes, hue is mistaken for color, but color is actually made up of hue, saturation, and lightness. So when we change our hue, you can see how when we move it right, we're getting some more interesting colors here. And I like kind of moving away from blue, even though I know blue would probably work really well, because even this, to me, looks really nice. I think it's because our association with water and merfolk or anything fantastical like what we're doing, it definitely brings forth the color blue to mind. But we're going to work with some weirder colors. What about that? What if she was more of that red that I was talking about earlier? Like that, and it has more of that like purple belly tone. So that would be the first way, and you can see before and after. Now, since I like both, I'm going to make a copy of that layer so that I know if I ever wanted to go back to it, I could. So now, the second thing that we can do, and mind you, usually shifting colors may happen more late in the game when you're getting closer to finishing, or kind of in the middle when you're still deciding. But I've found to have more fun playing with it in the beginning. So the next way, number 2, is going to Image, Adjustment, and then Color Balance. Now what this will do is you can adjust the midtones, the highlights, and the shadows of each of these sliders. Now you can get really crazy, and if you can see, it can get kind of to be an eyesore and oversaturated very quick. So you want to be careful with sliding these and how you adjust them. What I love about this is you can really get a different color palette that maybe you weren't thinking of experimenting with. It's even like that. I kind of dig a yellow mermaid. It's something I don't see too often. Yeah, and then have like a really highlighted purple or blue accent color. I think that could work really nice. Well, I think you... Oh, I can't read that, but thank you for following. Sorry, I have my OBS really small because I think OBS is also making my Photoshop a little slower, so I'm trying to avoid it. Oh, we have a lot of questions though. All right, let me... Lady Averin says, what would you consider to be a heavy color? Like a blood crimson, to me, just reads as very heavy. An example of very light color would be like a dandelion yellow. To me, that doesn't hold much weight. And now, color association with feeling is definitely more relative. So for you, maybe dandelion yellow is very heavy, but for me, I see it more floaty, more light. Oh, and Tigel just linked me the image of the octopus from Pixar's Finding Dory. It's actually a great reference too. And you can see how even he has a gradient from like more of a darker crimson. Here, let me show you on the, so I'm trying to talk about something while you guys can't even see. So even in this example with the octopus, you can see how he has more of a darker red at the top. It's more condensed. And then as we get to the bottom, oops, you can see how it's this nice transition. And the other thing that it's working really well here is there's color shifting. And that's when you take a local color, and depending if you want your lights to be more warm or cool, you bend it. So you can see how the middle color would be the local, and they're bending it to be more warm. So essentially you're adding a little more yellow to it. And then for their shadow color, they're making it more cool. So they're adding more blue to it. And that's what's giving this color shifting look. I mean, Pixar is obviously a master at what they do, and it's no surprise to me that they are color shifting within their color palette. Sweet Rose Breyer says, when do you think art should go from grayscale to color versus going just straight into color? Good question. I'm still trying to figure that out. I think before I would have said to just go straight into color when I first started doing these tutorials, and then as I started to learn more about the importance of value, then I think I would have said, no, you should probably first learn and understand how value works and how that affects the painting as a whole. And I still believe a lot of that. I think there's a lot that can be said with first understanding values before trying to go crazy with your color palette. But as you can tell with the painting that we're doing today, I went straight into color. And a lot of it is just for me experimentation. So let me put it in grayscale really quick so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So you can see, even though I'm working straight in color, I'm in the back of my mind working with different values that I know are contrasted. And as you can see here, like I knew I wanted the eyes very dark, but then the actual eyes themselves are very strikingly bright. And then the area around it is very dark. And that contrast will lead your eye to her eyes. So even though I feel like I have so much more to learn with color, if I go straight into color, I still have the grayscale and value work in my mind while I'm working. And if I ever needed to double check that, I'll pull up a hue and saturation slider, a layer where I can quickly check my values and make sure that I'm still on the right page. Okay, I actually like this color combination we have going right now. I'm just going to blend it out just a touch more. And then I'll talk about the third way to edit colors on the fly. And you might be thinking, well, why are you doing so much editing before you even start rendering? That's because something that Moorbacher explained to me over the weekend is he works in a way that old traditional painters used to work, where every step of his painting process, he makes sure that it is approved and it is right and it is, what do you call it? It was like fundamentally correct. So in the thumbnailing stage, he wouldn't go into the value stage until that thumbnail and that composition read very well and it worked. And he wouldn't even think about colors or he wouldn't think about anything else until that thumbnail worked. And when he went into values, he wouldn't lay any kind of color overlay or wouldn't do anything until his values checked out. And he was explaining to me this process, and it made so much sense to me in my mind. And I think that will help me with my digital paintings because I've been so flustered, especially late last year with digital versus traditional, where traditional I feel very at home. So if you guys are going through that similar struggle with your digital paintings or trying to figure out how to create a piece, break it down into like individual steps and don't move to the next step until the step that you're currently working on passes like all the checks of, are there any tangents? No? Okay. Does this composition bring the eye to where I want it? Okay. And just keep asking yourselves those questions. And if there's one question where you're like, for example, are there tangents? If there are, fix them before you move on to the next step. I feel that I'm a very methodical person, even though I'm an artist and I like to be free and crazy and weird in my or in my personal life, I would say when it comes to drawing and painting, I do have more of a system that I like to follow. And it doesn't mean that you are losing your artistic or creative ability. It just means that you're guiding it more down a path that will be more efficient, especially in today's age where you're a concept artist or you're trying to get a job in the art industry or a freelancer. Time is of the most valuable essence to you. And if you're wasting time, you're essentially wasting money or you're losing money. So that's why as an artist, especially a commercial artist, you really have to know how to get to that final point quickly and get your point across. Okay, let me work on this a little bit more before I keep blabbering my mouth off. But I'm going to read a question and I'll paint while I'm doing it. Miss Chibi Artist, hey, hi, how are you doing? It says, for my mermaid piece, my mermaids are floating on the surface of the water, and I wonder if you had any tips for painting water over skin. I've been staring at your Christina piece for inspiration. Excited face. Yes, look up. Let me find you the artist after the stream is over, and I'll post it in the community post with this stream. There's an artist that specifically paints people on the surface of water, and I was looking at a lot of his work. Now, he works in oils, so I had to kind of translate that into digital. But a lot of the times when you're drawing skin on top of water, the most important thing I learned was there is definitely going to be a hue shift from the skin color to the skin that's under the water. And then the deeper under the water the skin is, so let's say the hand is kind of floating underneath the water. It's like this, but your body, your chest is at the surface and then your arm is below it. The ripples in the water will cause distortion on the look of the arm. And that's something that you really should be looking at reference for. Drawing water is not easy. And I think going into the Christina piece, I thought it was going to be my easiest piece to create because I thought water should be pretty simple with just a few references. But it turned out to be probably one of the more difficult ones because of that reason. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, best of luck when you're painting it, and just use a lot of references. And I promise that it might be a little hard, but it was definitely worth the payoff in the end. And I'm very proud of the Christina piece now. Okay. So like I said, the third way that I'm going to quickly shift the colors here is one of the ways that actually my roommate Key or Gawky online mostly uses, and I'll show you how that one's done. Okay, so you create a copy of the layer that you're working on or the color. So usually you have to merge all of them into one layer, but thankfully that's what we have already. Then from here, on the bottom of the layers menu, you choose gradient map. I'm going to try to go a little slow because sometimes this can get kind of confusing. So now this properties menu will pop up. Why, thank you, Nakina. Well, thank you, KCP Fargo, and whoever was previous, I'm sorry, for following. So, okay, like I said, this properties menu will pop up. Now what you do is you click the gradient box, you click inside of it, and then this gradient editor will pop up. Now, I know it seems like a lot of steps, but stick with me, it'll be worth it. So now, from here, we're going to choose noise for the gradient type. And you can see how it already changed the look of our mermaid in the background here. So I'm going to change the roughness down to about 22. Now what the roughness means is like how staticky it might look. Like that is kind of cool, but it's kind of chaotic. So I want it to be more smooth in our final pass. So maybe even like 20, we'll say. So now what you can do is you can work in RGB. There's also HSB or LAB. It doesn't matter too much. So for, I think the purpose of a demonstration, I'll stick with RGB, which is red, green, and blue, which is our true color wheel palette. So if you followed me up to now, the last thing you do is you click randomize in the bottom right corner. And you're going to keep doing this until you get a color palette that you like. Now, For instance, this one I actually really like. It's almost like a Halloween mermaid. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna save this one, but I'm gonna make a copy of that so that we can keep editing it. And you'll see like instantly whether or not you like it or not. So you'll see a lot of the times when people use this technique, they're clicking the randomize button very fast, and they'll stop as soon as they see something that like speaks to them or stands out. Like that Halloween one that we just saw, that one spoke to me, so I stopped right there. And there'll be some times where you're just clicking through and you're not liking much of anything that you're seeing. Oh, that one's interesting. I like the gradient from this like light purple to more of a gray green and then to the skin color. Yeah, that one I kind of like too. While I'm doing this, let me look for another question. Joe Pasor says, the method you are using to color this, can you also use this to color if you made a pencil sketch and scanned it? Or do you first have to do something else with the sketch? No, you can definitely do this with a pencil sketch. I was going to do a pencil sketch originally, but I felt I need to get more comfortable working with digital because I am going to be purchasing an iPad Pro. I was waiting for the iPad Pro 2, but I'm kind of at my wit's end as at night I really want to start doing more of the swordplay comic or the panel pages, and I would like to do that on a portable tablet, and I have to do all that sketching digitally, so that's why this one is digital. Okay, a part of me wants to really do this Halloween one, but I know I should probably do something more fitting just because I feel like, well, I don't know, this purple one's kind of boring. I actually still like our yellow one that we started with. I mean, this one definitely does intrigue me. What do you guys think? Should we go for the purple one or should we do the yellow? Take a vote in the comments. So we'll do 1 for yellow and 2 for Halloween palette. And while I'm waiting for your guys' answers, let me see what other questions we got here. Lady Averin says, make the cheek lines the blue also? Oh, yes, I will do that. Good catch. Joe Pasor says, what layer modes are you using right now? All normal. So I'm not doing any layer modes besides the, I forget specifically what these are called, an adjustment layer. So I'm only working with adjustment layers right now. So no multiply, no overlays. Started raining. It's linking me to, yeah, I know, I love those. Octopus as well. But I don't think we're going to do anything crazy like that on this one. Christy says, how do I fix my patience issue when it comes to art? I sometimes get frustrated when working on a piece, so I just stop. This has resulted in so many unfinished pieces. I obviously need help. I don't think you need help. I think you just need to keep continuing push forward. I know that's easier said than done. But usually if I get frustrated on a piece, I will go walk away from it just for a little bit. Or there are times where I'll try to push through it, but a lot of times I'm wasting energy and effort because I'm so flustered that I can't think or see properly what I'm doing and what I think is wrong and what needs to be fixed. So I do recommend taking a break from it. Like get your eyes off of it and then come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes, and I think that will help. In terms of your patience, I do think that's something that all artists need to have. So if you're having trouble with patience with your piece, just find what you enjoy about the painting process and do a lot of that. For me, I love rendering. So I usually try to get my pieces to a place where I can start rendering and just kind of detail for hours upon end. This stage of the piece, I'm actively thinking, I'm doing a lot of critical thinking, and it's harder because it's more active, your mind's alive. But when I'm rendering, I can kind of go on autopilot, and I genuinely enjoy that part. So find what part you enjoy about digital painting, and then embrace it, and then embellish it on all your pieces. Ooh, okay, so the votes are coming in. Let's see here. I'm going to write them down. Okay, we got 1 and 2. 2 was our Halloween one. So let's see, we got, and please don't vote twice. 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. Oh, I think 2 is going to win this one. One, two, one. Okay, I think 2's going to win this one. I think the only thing I really want to edit, though, is our background color. I don't like that it's so matchy-matchy with her underbelly. You can see by taking the saturation down in the background, the oranges then on her chest and on the suction cups in her eyes start to light up even more. The one thing that I do miss, though, is having more of a defined gradient. So I'm going to add that back in. There we go. And then maybe I'll just turn the opacity down. Oh, that was the wrong layer. Ooh, how do you guys feel about this? So you can see with like color palettes, I feel like there are so many intriguing color palettes out there that it's hard for me to just stick with one. And I know for you guys, I'm sure you've had similar scenarios where when you're figuring out the color palette, halfway through you like do something to your colors and you'll like it even better, and you're like, oh, but I really like the old one too, and you have to make that decision of which one works best. But that's a good scenario to be in. That means you have two that work well, and you have to choose between two goods. I think it's harder when you have like two bads and you're like, well, which one's not as bad, you know? So now I'm going to make a new layer above the line art. So what I'm going to do here, let's look at what it looks like without the line art. Oh, I like that. Yeah, I definitely like that. I am going to add the orange to the cheeks like Lady Averin suggested. I like where this is going. So now I'm going to teach you guys how to quickly change the line art on the fly. And this is something that I used to mask it out, but I would always get like little clipping errors near the areas of the line art that weren't as like a lower opacity. So let me show you the new way I do it, and it works perfectly. So in the same way that we did the background or the body of our mermaid, we're going to do to our line art. So make sure your line art layer is selected, and then choose that lock, that little checkerboard next to the lock. And then choose a color. I'm going to choose one on the top of her head and make it slightly darker. I'm going to fill in that line art. I mean, I could do the whole thing, but I like to have some color similarity between the color of the body and the color of the line art. So then down here where it's more green, I'm going to color select. I'm going to eyedropper tool that green, make it a little darker, and then fill it in. And the reason that I do that is so that, oops, I didn't want to get that background area, is because when I'm finished with my digital work, I try not to have a lot of lines showing. And even with traditional, I guess, there's some etch sketch marks that I like to leave, but I try to keep it as smooth and as toolless as possible. You can see if we did the green on the top, it looks incorrect. It looks very weird and wrong. Okay, and just as a recap of what it looked like before, let me fill in the lines again with black. And you can see how there's such a striking difference from before and after, where now it's a little more smooth, and then we can work on rendering on top of. And this is where, for me, it gets a little bit more fun because I can get more into the rendering stage. Ray Ram says, why pick one? You can just do all of them. Definitely, I could. I don't think I will. So now moving forward, I'm going to start working with my blending tool. Now this is a tool that's specific to Photoshop, or the mixer brush. I'm sorry, not the blending tool, the mixer brush tool. And I really like the way that it works with kind of taking the line art out while still incorporating it. So I'll show you how it works. I want to make sure I have sample all layers on, and this is all on a new layer, mind you. And I'm just gonna just brush right on. And you can kind of see it's like airbrushing the area around it, and it's mixing the colors together. Hence it being a mixer brush. Now, I've had a big problem with making my art sometimes look too smooth and not letting some of that line quality show. And I think that's the biggest difference between my digital and traditional. Is traditional, I'll let my lines be shown and I'll let them still be apparent even when it's finished. But with digital, for some reason I have this weird mind trick where I feel I have to render out everything and it has to look like a 3D model almost. So moving forward with digital, I'm definitely allowing myself to be more sketchy or leave some of those lines in. I think it just becomes more of a mind game of like, well, I could make it smoother, so I'm gonna, but I have to pull back and be like, well, that doesn't mean it's going to be better. Just because it's something is going to be more realistic or smoother doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. It just means it's going to be more smooth and more realistic. But will that make a stronger piece? Maybe, maybe not. It all kind of depends. So here, I'm going to start smoothing some things out, but then I'm going to add some lines on top of it to add in some of that sketchy quality back in. The other thing that I find I always have to do with digital versus traditional is with digital, I always feel the need to make it have more highlights and have it be less matte, even though I love the look of matte versus shiny and reflective. For some reason I always make my digital stuff more rounded out. So I think one of my goals moving forward this year are going to be to let the colors kind of stand on their own and not have the need or the itch to want to render it out and make it more realistic. And the reason that I liked doing what we did first before I get to rendering it out is now I feel like we have a pretty good foundation that I can render things on top of. And yeah, there might be some areas with the color that is too saturated, especially down here near the tentacles. That's something that I can fix easily with even more color shifting. So if you've never really worked with a foundation of kind of a flat color on your pieces before, I would definitely recommend trying it out. It's helped me get over kind of being over particular about my process and let it be more organic. And if there's colors that I want to start off with, maybe that'll change by just experimenting with what other color palettes I could work with. Sometimes I lock in a color palette so early in the stage of painting that it just feels like I'm not even giving an opportunity for there to be a chance of something different. And in the long run, that's just hurting me. That's not helping my piece in any way. And if you guys haven't been able to really see what this mixer brush has been able to do, let me turn this layer on and off. And you can see how it does become a lot smoother. And like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean better, but it's something more of the look that I'm going for. So I'm going to smooth things out first and then get into rendering again. So let me see what other questions we have. Lights and C says, why an iPad Pro versus a Wacom Cintiq Companion or Mobile Studio Pro? I need to put it out there. I'm not this like Apple specific person. Even in college, I had both. And I think they both had their pros and cons. I could definitely see the advantage to using a PC for some things, and then other things I could see the advantage of working on a Mac. In terms of working with either the Intuos Companion or the Surface Pro or the iPad Pro, I personally found the most comfort with the iPad Pro, and specifically, what's that little app called? Procreate, I believe is what it's called. I love Procreate. I can't wait to experiment more with it. And I didn't even realize when you work in Procreate, it auto records everything you do, and it doesn't slow down the computer or the software. But if you really like what you did and you want to share the time lapse, you just export it out of Procreate, and it's really easy. And the other thing is you can import from Photoshop files, and it'll keep all your layers. So for me, I think just getting an iPad Pro makes more sense because all my products are Apple, and just for like charging it or connecting, I had a lot of issues with my Samsung phone with my Apple computer, and connecting it and getting my music on there was kind of a hassle. The one that I didn't really care enough to deal with, so I just switched back to even using an iPhone. And maybe that's how they get you, right? Maybe I'm just a lamb following the flock of Apple. But in terms of actually using the iPad Pro, I genuinely enjoyed working on it. And I like that the pen was slimmer. And yeah, I don't really have anything against the Surface Pro. I want the iPad Pro. Lady Raven says, the problem I tend to have with the mixer brush is that it makes things look out of focus. How do you fix that? I will show you, because yes, it definitely does make things look out of focus. One of the things you can do, like right now, I'm starting to render. I don't know why, bad habit. But you can see how I picked up the color of the shoulder and I started rendering it right up against the tentacle that was resting on it. And in that way, creating more of those sharp edges will be a nice contrast to everything else being more smooth and soft. All right, I really got to stop rendering or else I won't be able to stop. Because the one thing I did want to show you guys is doing the tentacle part. Like I said in the start of the stream, tentacles are one of my favorite materials to render because there's so much texture involved, and you can really work with the highlights in the way that the surface of the texture has all these little grooves and bumps. There we go. So I guess I'm getting to a point where I could start doing more of the rendering process. Or maybe I'll do just a little more on the face. Because as much as I love the mixer brush, it can definitely make things look too, not even smooth, but oftentimes blurry. Which that's definitely a problem. Daniel Busmar says, I just realized I have the same problem with digital that you have. Your explanation actually helped me realize why I never finish. Well, good. Because, I mean, that's first and foremost why we even do these streams. It's to answer the questions that you guys might have, and then hopefully help you guys out. Good morning, Key. Key's like that wonderful little sister I never wanted. Okay, so I'm zoomed in on the face, and I'm going to do some work on the tentacles over here, the suction cups, and then some areas on our face. So I think the easiest place to render out and make it more crisp would be her nose. So as an example, let me grab one of these lighter colors down here. We're going to block it out a bit more. And this is what will help make using the mixer brush less blurry. Because then you can even pull back the mixer brush and blend it in, but be more conscious of the edges that you're leaving. And you got to leave in some of those sharp ones. Splimey says, if you get an iPad Pro, I heartily recommend using AstroPad to use it as a monitor to your computer. It works beautifully with Photoshop. I did not know that. I will definitely check into that then. AstroPad. I just have to remember that. That's going to be the biggest challenge. Actually, I think I'll remember that. AstroPad.
Remember Astro Boy?
Never saw Astro Boy.
Never seen it.
Oh.
He was great.
So even with our cheeks, you can see if we lay in that yellow first and then block it out with this purple color. It just will make it more sharp. Now, part of the problem with digital is sometimes it can look very digital when you do things like this because of how sharp it is. So then I try to like mess it up just a bit so it doesn't have that super squeaky clean brush stroke line, because I'm not the biggest fan of that. Splammy says there's also an app called Duet, which is great as well, but AstroPad is my app of choice. I think I'll remember that actually. Faithful Imagination says, what are some of your top tips for traditional graphite drawings? Like what you do? My top tips. Well, it's definitely a lot different than what we're doing today. I feel like the way I approach digital versus the way I approach traditional is very, very different. But my top tips with traditional would be start light. Work if you're right-handed from left to right and up to down if possible, so that you prevent smudging. Don't be afraid to erase. It's a big one. Would be my other best advice. I feel like it took me a while to get comfortable with working traditionally. So maybe allow yourself to work more expressively and more gestural from time to time, and then other times be more concentrated and really focus on just rendering something more on a realistic level. Because I think combining the best of both worlds will create the best traditional drawing possible. But if you only focus on one, I feel like it'll really lack the other. Like, I think my biggest problem with traditional is oftentimes my figures or my subject matters feel more stiff. And I think that's because I don't allow myself to be more gestural with my pencil drawings. I just kind of go and I just start, and the drawings often look a bit more stiff. And then people that are more gestural, oftentimes their rendering abilities aren't quite great, or it's very quick looking. So oftentimes it comes off more cartoony or not quite as polished. And a lot of it is a style choice too. So I can't necessarily say what is right or wrong with that, but I will say I think it would help if you at least experiment with both. Oops. Okay, I'm making my brush really small, and this is allowing me to have these very small brush strokes that maybe you won't be able to see from further away, but close up, you're adding in little sharpness around areas, and our eye will subconsciously pick it up. Let's see what that looks like from further away. I gotta flip it, something that I tend to forget doing while I'm doing digital. Digital says, it's not a good morning for Key and I. Both of us are very depressed and upset. Oh no. Well, why is that? That's not good. Lady Averin says, I have to say I love the highlights under her eyes. They remind me of lantern light reflecting off dark water. Oh yeah. I like that description. I love, I don't know what the official term is, but when girls have wet eyes and they put on, almost it looks like Vaseline, but it creates this very, very heavy reflective quality around their eyes, especially if they have a dark layer of makeup underneath. I think it has this really cool effect then. It's very, very similar to this. So let's see now. So another good area would be wherever there is a subject matter that overlaps another part or section. So these tentacles here are a great place for us to add some sharpness to, because like I said, that's what we're trying to do right now after mixer brushing so much and making everything look very smooth and borderline blurry. We need to add a bit more crispness back to it, so that way they stand out more. So you can see how instantly that like it pushes this tentacle strand above the other one. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the cheek here. By making it darker, the slightly lighter tentacle then appears to be further back because of that contrast. And even with the tentacle in the center, I could lighten it up and even make the cheek even more defined. Like that. I actually don't know if I like the tentacle going that dark in the background. Something like that. Okay, now for the actual tentacle part, I'm going to open up my other screen here so I can directly use a material reference so that I could get the tentacles looking as close as possible to what I'm looking for, which is more of a realistic tentacle, an octopus tentacle. Okay, and while I'm doing that, let me see if there's some questions here. Chrissy says the wet eyes. Yeah, that's what I like. Tigil says, let's just say that we are both heavily affected by someone leaving our world recently. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Valentina, the upset of last weekend. Faithful says, in digital, do you suggest to start off soft and blurry or hard and sharp? Soft and blurry. Yeah, definitely. I think if you go sharp, you don't have any room to sharpen it later on. Where if it's blurry, you're almost intentionally leaving it to be more malleable and like you can shape and form it as you go. But if you have very crisp lines to start with, I feel like you're committing to those lines early where maybe those aren't the best lines for you to work with. Okay, so for our tentacle, this is also going to be a little weird because I'm working with such strange colors. But that's the beauty of doing things that are new for you, is you get to kind of actively learn. Because oftentimes when you're painting, if it's something that you're familiar with, you're not really giving it much mind. You're just, going through the routine that you often do regularly. So the first thing is we're going to make the rings on the suction cups dark. So I'm going to choose this very dark purple color to complement her head. And the way that tentacles work is they go down into the arm of the tentacle and they slightly get bigger. And even the way that I did these, I probably should have made them closer. Usually suction cups aren't crazy far apart. A lot of times they're just touching each other even. But not always. I think that's why we can get away with this. But admittedly, if I had to redo this, I would make them closer. But that's okay. So you can see here, we have a lot of confusion. And to lessen that confusion, I'm going to take this green color in the back. I'm just going to lighten it up. Like that. And I definitely want to add more to it later, but for the time being, it definitely then separates the two forms, so there's no confusion. Oh, I guess you know what I could do to make these bigger? I could literally just make the suction cups bigger right now. That way they are closer together. And just because I use that dark purple for the rings up here around the suction cups, I could go for a dark green as we get lower down. I'm definitely more playful with the way that I'm working with color now. I used to commit so much to a specific color and it couldn't go outside of that range because it wouldn't match. But now I understand that sometimes if it's not perfectly realistic, it could actually be better because you're thinking about the piece as a whole composition, as a little art piece compared to just a figurative study of, in this case, like a mermaid, or I guess if we were doing like an octopus study. Okay, now these rings, I'm actually going to make quite a bit lighter. Started Raining says, did you watch the remake of Samurai Jack? I watched the first 4 episodes, I believe, but I haven't seen the new ones yet. No. Recently, I've been watching the new season of Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix. It's like I like the humor because it's so fast, and it doesn't rely on being raunchy, which is kind of a change of pace. And I mean, nothing wrong with raunchy. Trust me, South Park's one of my favorite comedic series, but it's kind of a nice change of pace where they're making these fast jokes, and oftentimes they're just very tasteful. Okay, now for her actual tentacle hair, I'm going to break it up. I think it's way too clean. And tentacle, especially on a octopus tentacle, has a lot of rippling and layers and a lot of little bumps. Oftentimes it gets glossed over because it's wet or slimy and or pulled out of the water. So it looks like it's very, very smooth, but actually they're very bumpy. It's a very bumpy surface. And a way to kind of emphasize that is I could take this green color then, lighten it up, and just go up some of these bumps. Like that. Then as you can see, it does look rather digital looking right now. So I can take the mixer brush and just give a slight pass on the edges, just so it blends in more. And as always, I need to zoom out and see what this looks like. Yeah, that's kind of the look I was going for. Now, the thing that I may think while I'm looking at where I'm at is I am just okay with the colors that we have in. Or you know what? First, I'm going to change that back color. It's way too light. It's like very distracting, actually. Why, thank you, Debbie Sheen, for following. Okay, so now from here, if I was like, I'm just okay with our colors right now, and once again, flatten everything, make a copy of it, paste it, And mind you, I'm working more of like a real painting, so that's why I like working on one layer. But if you are doing commercial work, if you're doing this for a client, oftentimes you want to work on separate layers. But since I'm treating this more of like a fun experiment, I'm just merging it all together. So I'm going to color balance this again. I'm going to do my best to keep it away from being a blue and green mermaid. So first I'm going to pick colors that I feel work very well on a color balance, and then I'm going to hue shift it. Yeah, so I definitely find that very striking right now. Let me try. Oh, you know what? I'm going to try the gradient way. Because as much as I like the look of this right now, it's a little saturated for my taste, but I'm trying to stick away from doing a blue or green mermaid. So let's do this. And I think being more of like a color experiment stream, I think it makes sense to show you guys even midway through, you could be thinking, I'm not really digging the way it's looking right now. Let me just give a quick color shift. And you might be thinking, well, isn't this cheating? Because it feels like you don't actually know your colors. You're just playing with these weird randomize or hue shifting or color balancing things, and you're just waiting until something kind of works. And it's true. In a weird way, you are looking at, well, thank you, Sithx15 for following. You're looking at these different methods of affecting your colors quickly and kind of on the fly. And in that sense, you're able to get a new result very quickly, and it might just completely replace what you originally had. Now, the way that I look at it is you have your own taste in color and the way that you see color. So if you're picking colors that you know you like, the way that you get there, if it was something a little more abstract or strange, you're still getting to that place and you're still picking the colors on your own. It's just you're choosing it on a very abstract way. Like, this is very interesting, but I'm not going to choose that one, obviously. You know what? I'm going to try lab. I feel like we might get more interesting colors. See, now that's like super bright. Because a part of me wants to do a red one. Ooh. Let's throw that on it and see what that looks like at a lower opacity. No, actually, I don't like that. It's all in the luck of the draw. Let me find another question while I'm doing this. Starter Ring says, what do you think of the art style of Samurai Jack in general? I like it. I think with that type of show, I think it works well. Why, thank you, E. Jokey, for following. Man, they're really not making it easy. I mean, Where before I felt like we found color combinations right away. You know what? This is... And sometimes color can be frustrating like this, so you have to take matters into your own hands. Let me make it less saturated. I feel like it's blindingly saturated right now. This is tough, guys. This is tough. It's like I'm fighting all my want to just create a green and blue mermaid. We're going to do it. We're going to get away from it. Oh, I kind of like that. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, I like where this is going. It's funny, on my second monitor, it looks a lot different. So I feel like you guys might be seeing something different than what I'm seeing. There we go. Yeah, I like the way that this looks. See, now we've got some interesting colors in play. It just sometimes takes a little while to get there. So now what I can do is, since some of the... Bless you. Ooh. Since some of those highlights, like on the eye and the skin slit here, lessened, I can take my brush in, kind of add it back in. Even with her eyes, I can give her more of this golden hue. I actually really like that there's no highlight really in play right now. I feel like I'm so obsessed with adding that, and the fact that it's not really in play right now, I really like. So now, you can see how, I think I'm going to do a focus in right now. You can see how this area looks a bit messy. So let's go ahead and clean it up. Especially with retaining some of that sharpness, I'm actually going to switch to a... you know what? I'll play with a different brush. I was going to switch to the chalk brush, but I feel like that would be going back to a comfort zone. And since we're experimenting with color, might as well experiment with different brushes too. So this is one of those brushes that follow the direction the stroke is going in. So it's essentially a block, but then it'll follow you. And even with the side of the neck here, I think I'm going to let some of that line art just disappear. And then to give some more separation from this suction cup to her neck, I'm just going to give more of that color here. This is where I'm even going to use a selection tool. This will create a very quick, sharp edge. That, grab the color. And this is something I've been doing more often, and I see a lot of artists using this technique. I first saw it when I looked at the people behind Tonko House with the Dam Keeper. They use selection tool all the time. And then more recently with Danny Diaz, he does a lot of selection tool too. And I didn't understand why they were doing it. To me, it just seemed like more of a task. But then I realized how much time they're saving because then they can get that nice crisp edge right away without having to try to blend it in. And that's also a style choice. If you don't like having any sharp edges, then I don't think selection tool is necessarily the right tool for you to work with. But it's something to at least try and maybe see if you like it or not. So you can see from far away, that just becomes a lot more crisp now. And you know what? I think I'm going to even play with this color palette more. So I like what we've gotten so far here. And you can see how we don't necessarily need a line here. It just blends, or just it contrasts itself from the values and the hues that we're working with. Oh, and I really like that. Now I'm gonna do probably this section here as a quick little focus study, and then some areas on the face, and then the stream will probably be over. But I want to show you how I would probably render the rest of this out. Now the reason that I'm zoomed in too is because I feel like we've hit the point of, I like the foundation, I like the values we've got, and now from here on I can just start rendering. Now it's up to you if you choose to zoom in or not. Oftentimes this is considered one of those things where you want to be working farther away so you can definitely see how it's looking at a distance. But for a material study that's so meticulous, like a tentacle, I want to make sure I'm zoomed in and I'm really getting it. And a lot of the tentacle look probably won't come until I add the highlights in. But I'm still debating in my mind whether I want to do like a realistic sheen on the tentacles, as I really am trying to avoid the colors white and black almost entirely now in my pieces. It's been kind of, I don't want to say earth-shattering, but definitely very different from what I'm used to. When I was doing realistic pieces, I would always have some areas of black, and my highlights were always like a pretty much pure white. And I've gotten rid of using pure white, but I still use a very light gray to do some of my highlighted areas. So I'm trying to avoid doing that more. Okay, so for the suction cup, it's actually dipped in a bit. And it looks like you can see inside of these little suction cups. So it looks something more like that. Actually looks like there's like a slightly inner ring. Now, obviously, do you have to do this much time and attention to every single tentacle, pore, or suction cup? Not necessarily. I think especially with like concept art, you definitely would not be giving it this much time and attention. It'd be much quicker. So I think the best way to figure out, do we want there to be more of that pristine highlight or not, is to just experiment and lay it on. Oh man, my Photoshop's really laggy right now. Oh, it's chugging. All I just saw was shenanigans while Tim is drawing. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Art of Wobble says, whenever I use the selection tool, it ends up with a very pixelated edge. Is there a way to avoid that, or do I have to fix it afterwards? I don't necessarily usually have a pixelated edge. I think you might be working at too low of a resolution if that's the case. But if you are working at a higher resolution, what I would do if I ever see like a little pixelated edge is just either mixer brush it or blend it with your actual brush tool. And that should get rid of it. Okay, I'm getting to the point where let's just see what a highlight would look like here. And thank you, Nataria Zine. Oh, I could not read that fast enough. I'm sorry, but thank you for following. Okay, so the highlights on the tentacle. Now, I already feel like our character is getting more into like a fantastical realm anyways, so I feel like I don't have to do pure realism here. But I think just for my own curiosity, I need to see what this looks like. Oh yeah, that definitely does add a layer to it for sure. I think let me go ahead and I'm gonna lock it. What if we make it more of like a blue, like a cool reflection? Yeah, I actually don't like the cool reflection. I think just as a little test, let me see if I add in little highlights in places that I think they would go and just see whether or not I like that. Because like I said earlier, I have a problem with over highlighting things. But I think I want to just see what it looks like so I can give myself a comparison of what it would look like with and without the highlight. Hopefully even for you guys to see like what the difference would be when I'm talking about this. So I feel like the problem with making it a very shiny reflective surface is I feel like then it would lose some of that color play that we have. And I'll definitely show you guys with the layer on and off. Okay, so this is before and after. I'm thinking I definitely like it without, but I can understand why with adds a bit more of value or more of like a shape to the objects we're creating. Because I feel like without it, it definitely reads more flat, but in like a painterly kind of way. And I like that. So maybe at the end, if I'm still feeling like it's missing some of that, I could add in just a few highlights. Oh, yeah, actually, this is a good example of what I believe Art of Opals asked before, where it becomes too crisp. So you see how this area looks very sharp, and I do want some sharp lines, but it almost like stands out for being too sharp. So I did a quick mixer brush, and you can see how I just slightly gave it a bit more of a textured edge. And then from further away, it doesn't stand out as much. I think that's why with digital, sometimes that's a problem where things are standing out when they're not supposed to be standing out. All right, so let me do more of a quick paint here. And trust me, quick painting when Photoshop's deciding to be a little laggy can definitely be a pain in the butt. But I actually really like how this is turning out. So I don't mind if I have to like use the keyboard shortcut 3 or 4 times before it actually responds to me. See how the mixer brush just goes right in there. Creates a nice little texture. And see, even like right there, those little ripples. Let me zoom in. This is probably one of the best things I learned from Alan Williams when he was showing me his techniques. Was looking at this area right here. You can see how it looks very flat. There's no really ripple or anything kind of fun or texture that you can see. So what you do is you take the lighter color that's usually in the center here, and then put it pretty harsh, then blend it left in the opposite direction. And that will create that little ridge. If you do it multiple times, if you blend it out well enough, it should look like a nice little added material texture bonus. And since the octopus tentacle has kind of an irregular surface anyways, I'm almost allowing my blender brush to be more textural and not let it bother me if some of that chalky texture is coming up. So now in areas like here, you can't really tell, is the tentacle resting on the shoulder or is there supposed to be a cast shadow? What's going on? So what we can do, let me try both actually. We'll try one where the tentacle is kind of hanging in front of the shoulder, and then there's one where it's hanging right on the shoulder itself. So because the shadow starts here, and then there's some distance here, you can tell that the tentacle is more in front. But if I erased it where it had a very soft edge, then all of a sudden it looks like it's resting on the shoulder more. Because cast shadows are sharp, and then natural shadows where the light kind of gradients into the shadow aren't quite as defined. Oh, guys, I really like this color combination. It's like something that I haven't worked with before. And I think with digital, I need to find more of these like experiments of things I haven't done before, because then I feel like I'm actually growing as an artist. So I'm glad that you guys, for those of you that came today, got to see this mermaid piece come together. I thank you. Zatanna create. Oh, I missed it. Man, I should just set that to like 20 seconds so that there's like no possible way of me missing new names. But thank you for following. Oh yeah, speaking of the followers for this account, I am shipping out tomorrow the golden fridges for those of you that have been a subscriber for 6 months here on our Twitch channel. I am sending those out. And I want to thank you guys for sticking around for that long. I hope you guys have been learning from this channel. Yeah, something like that. And then what I immediately see now is like this tentacle then, it just needs to be more refined. And I definitely don't want that line art sticking out there. There, something like that. And even with her skin, the thing that I always like doing with organic type creatures is having kind of a gradient, especially with an underbelly that's very smooth, is not having like a sharp cut from where the back and the belly begins. So I'm going to have more of a gradient. And I even did this with not only the merman that I did recently, but pretty much with every creature I feel like I've ever done. So whether it's with stripes or we could even do a few dots. You know what? We'll try both. We'll see how they look. Actually, you know what? That gave it more of like a reptile feel. I'm not really digging that at all, actually. I think we'll stick with the stripes. Yeah, something like that just feels way more natural. You know what's funny is even this color that I'm color picking behind this tentacle, I thought for sure it would be like a light blue gray. It's actually on the red spectrum. I would not have guessed that, but sometimes color illusions play with our mind because of the colors that are next to it, and that color relativity throws us off. Part of the reason I love color. It's because you can make a blue look red and you can make a red look blue. Not like crazy obvious, but a very subtle difference. And oftentimes that's referred to as the temperature of the color. So you can make a blue feel more warm and a red feel more cool. That's probably the more accurate way I should be describing it to you guys. And since you can see some of the tentacle suction cups back here, see how they really pop? That's that contrast of color. Actually, let me zoom in. So see how those two really pop? That's because before it was all kind of the same color, but then you throw a contrast of hue in there and all of a sudden it really stands out. I don't know if I like that little addition. Let me see. Actually, I kind of like it. So now I really should carry more of that tentacle texture around here. So if you guys can probably understand where I would continue to take this further, it's just a lot of like, now I think I'm entering in the autopilot zone where I know kind of what I want to do and where to take it. So this is where I get excited personally about painting digitally. Because sometimes getting up to this point can be frustrating, and I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. Where you just feel like nothing is really hitting the marks that you're wanting it to. The blending might not be looking right. The composition as a whole just bothers you. Whatever it is, just push through and maybe give one of these color experiments a try. I'm telling you, it saved me from a lot of frustration doing my own work. And hopefully the ones that I showed you earlier today can help you push through. So I'm adding more of this light gray green on this side of her head to give more of a contrast from the purple, because I really should be working on different layers. Oh, there we go. So yeah, you can see how it just gives a slight variation, and you can tell that they're two separate tentacles. Now, whenever I really want a sharp edge, sometimes I won't even use the selection tool. I don't know if this is laziness, but I'll just draw over top, and then I'll pick up the color of the first tentacle, and I'll lay it right on. So I know I'm getting a sharp edge, and that's just kind of one of the ways I do it. Like I said, that might actually come out of laziness, though. I really should be just working with the selection tool when it's something like that. But, you know, then again, I see a lot of concept artists do that. So I don't know if it's necessarily a lazy way. I think it's just a more on the go. You don't want to slow your pace or break your mental thought. Oh, you know what might be kind of fun? Let's do a... I'm going to make a new layer because, what, we got like 10 minutes left? I'm going to do a new layer. Oh, my Photoshop's really kicking right now. There we go. I'm just going to see what a quick multiply layer would look like going down. Oops. Oh my gosh. I don't know if it's just because it's near the end of the stream, but my Photoshop is fighting. Oh yeah, my Photoshop's like, no, we're ready for you to take a break. I'm like, no, you're not. So see, even having like a darker gradient going down. Now, often I don't advise using multiply or overlay. I feel like it's been one of my crutches that I try not to use as much anymore. But I definitely catch myself using it. But for things like this, I think it's actually effective because you're not using it as a way to correct a scenario. It's like a way to test out what it would look like if slightly darker or slightly more saturated, which is what overlay will do. Where multiply will definitely darken it. But I like having a darker upper part, and then if we like lightened up our eyes here, let me switch back to our multiply, and I'll just take my eraser tool and erase those hot colors in her eyes and on the tentacles themselves. You can see what it looks like before and after. So it might be a touch dark, but that's why we have the opacity setting. We can just change it. So yeah, I'm digging how this is looking. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them now. I think I might cut this one a little early. But, oh, you know what? We got a lot of questions that I haven't answered. Okay, Chrissy McVie says, oh, this is when we were talking about the highlight. I feel like the white shine is a bit too distracting. I think maybe if it was done with a different color, it would be good. I agree. I might try, you know what? Why don't we do that while the stream's still going? So let's try a highlight that worked more with the colors that we're already working with in the scene. Because maybe it was just the fact that it was white and it was the overbearing. Yeah, you know, I'm still not crazy about it. I think there are benefits to doing it, but I just don't think it works for what we're trying to do with this piece. In terms of actually finishing this one, I don't know if I will take it all the way to finish. I might, you know, I think just to keep pushing myself working digitally and getting comfortable with it. But I don't think I would finish it this week just because I want to make sure I get the things done for work. A lot of testing with the new site, which once again, let me put it out there for those of you who weren't here in the beginning. If you want to beta test the new site that will be coming out in June, I'm going to put it in the comment section right now. You can go ahead and be one of our beta testers for 6.0. Oops, sorry for getting quiet. I was so focused. I am not says I still want to know info about the contest. Pretty please. Um, if or wait. Oh, okay. Yeah. For the contest, it will. I can tell you this. It will happen in July, and the prizes are gonna be doubled. We're having a lot of good new loot for you guys to win. And for those of you who don't know what the heck I'm talking about, we do a contest at CG Cookie every season, so every spring, summer, fall, winter, and it's usually themed in a concept art character. We might do an environment this year, though. I feel like we've been so focused on characters and other things, but for the summer one, we're going to be taking it back to a gang that we did last year. We did the Battered Bunnies, but what we're going to do, though, oops, I thank you, Gregory De Niro, for following. But what we're going to do is we're going to do their rival gang. What about their rival gang? I can't tell you yet, but I will say it definitely has something to do back in that world, and I'm pretty excited for this one. Because Battered Bunnies, I think, to this date, is my favorite contest we've had. I do think the Peppermint Night was a close second if I had to pick another one. Something about the Battered Bunny ones really inspired people to create some really cool, interesting concepts. And the point of even why we do these contests isn't just so it's like a show-off contest of who's the best. It's supposed to challenge you guys and maybe push you outside your comfort zone, try new things, and create what I would hope to be portfolio pieces that you can then show game directors or animation studios to land a job. So it's not like we're just doing random character things just so that you can have fun. Well, hopefully you have fun, but you can just kind of mess around and not get real work done. It's supposed to push you to create the best that you possibly can so that you can hopefully put it in your portfolio and be proud to have it alongside your other work. Okay. End or beginning of the month? Man, you really want to know. Middle. It'll probably be around like July 15th or 18th. If I had to ballpark it right now. Elias Simone one says, how do you choose which brush to use? When do you recommend using texture brushes and when to not? This is something I'm still figuring out for myself too. I used to only paint in the circle hard edge brush, and then through school, I would then only work with it was called a skin brush, and that was the only thing I worked with. And then after school, I feel like I started working more with a texture chalk brush, and that was what I was using primarily then. And I don't think it's good to feel like you have to rely on one brush. I don't think it's good to rely on a multitude of brushes to create your end result, because then I think the brush is possibly doing more work than you are. And I feel like the tool isn't as important as the artist using the tool. And I know you probably have heard that before, so I won't give the cliche answer. I'll just say I like to start off more with a basic brush. And then as I get into more of the detailing or rendering, that's when I switch over to a texture brush. And I feel like I've relied too much on the chalk brush where I was limiting myself. And I think everything had to have kind of that chalky appearance. So switching it up with this new brush that I'm working with now that I haven't really worked with before, you can see how it follows the direction of the stroke, and it's similar to the chalk brush, but then it forces me to think of the angle that I'm working with while I'm drawing. So anything to keep the experience kind of fresh and experimental and try to learn from it is the best, but don't feel like you have to have these weird brushes to create masterpieces. Even reading the new Imagine FX that I got yesterday, it was like almost every single artist that did a tutorial in that book used a very basic either hard edge round or a flat brush with some texture on the side. And it just kind of reassured me that that is the route to go. You don't have to use these crazy brushes, and just find like a few good ones that you're comfortable with and really make the best use of them that you can. Okay, I think we're going to cut this one off. I actually this is probably one of the most fun streams I've had, just in terms of what we created. I really like this, and I don't say that a lot about my digital work, but I like the direction that this is going in, and I'm happy to see where it goes from here. So yeah, thank you guys again for coming to the CG Cookie live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, and that's -6 GMT if you're watching outside of the States. Next week, what is it? So it's June. Let me think. What are we? I know the site is going to be launching soon, so I might do something fun for that. You know what? I'm actually not going to say what we're going to do next week because I want to think about it. I don't know if I want to do something a little more concentrated and give you guys more of a full tutorial type thing where I'm drawing like a cherry or something that is very isolated and I can show you the rendering ability using these techniques. Or even maybe taking this into next week if I don't finish it outside of that. Yeah, you know what? I don't want to say what it is because I'm not sure myself. So I'm going to figure it out and I'll get back to you. I'll post it on Monday. How about that? I'll post it Monday on the community forums. Okay. And the last few questions I'm going to just knock out really quick. Jay Hawley 218 says, any plan for color variation on the disc of the forehead? Possibly. I kind of did that as like, I feel like it's a trope that I do now with my work on adding a little circle right there. So I might get rid of it. I don't know if it adds anything to the piece necessarily, but I'll experiment with it and see what we get. I am not says, thank you. That's the most precise answer for a contest we've ever gotten. Yeah, you're twisting my arm here. But I think just because of how big it's going to be and how excited I am, I don't mind sharing a little extra details about when it's coming out. Oh, Owen says, I feel like the contest is related to fox and wolves since bunnies get hunted by them. I'll just say it's a very good inclination. And Sparticle says, would you also use tilt while you're working? I normally don't, but I am definitely curious to try. I feel like I've written off certain things that come with Photoshop with their brushes, and I feel like I don't use them just because I haven't before, and I think it's more of a comfort zone. So I think I should start using tilt and see if I like it or not. But yeah, okay. Well, here was our mermaid. If really quick, I'll show you guys some of the different steps we took today to get to where we are. Started with our line art, then we built it up. We were gonna have a yellow mermaid for a while, and then of course it turned blue and green, which I don't know what I was thinking. That's the one thing I wanted to avoid. Oh, look at, ooh, what is this? What layers am I turning on and off? So here's our blue and green one, which I actually still see some strength in this one, but I'm glad it went in a different direction because I like this a lot more. Yeah, those shines just really don't work for me. That's where we're at. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next week. All right, bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.